Hello, hello, this is Blue coming to you live from the Space Needle. And today we have a great interview with one of the top players from the first major North American Altered TCG event held by Gamers Guild in Arizona. None other than one of the finalist Waru Mack players, Isis. We get a lot of insight on the current metagame and how we may have missed out on a finalist Rin and Orchid hero deck at the event. That being said, please like, subscribe, and comment if you absolutely love this interview content so I know to keep making it. And now, take it away, me. Hello, today with us we have Isis, one of the top 8 players and finalist of the recent and first major US Altered event held by Gamers Guild in Arizona. And getting right into it, thanks for joining me today. And starting off, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everyone a bit about how you got into Altered.
Hi, my name is Tatiana, or Isis is like a nickname for the internet and stuff. I've been playing TCGs I guess like a decade-ish, mostly Magic and Pokemon. But I found out about Altered in November from an obscure Dicebreaker article that I haven't ever heard anyone mention. There was like a different article a month after that one that was like really negative about the innovative features because, that's how like journalism works. The negative ones go all over the place. This Dicebreaker article wasn't as popular, but I think it was in my Google feed, and Google has stalked me so much that they probably have all kinds of knowledge about what I would be into. I have always really liked like convenience features and like ways to like make collecting easy in games. It's been something really important to me. So when I found out about the ability to replace your cards, like not have to worry about losing a card, being able to just be able to buy a card and just be done. You don't have to ever worry about losing them. I've lost my deck box at a major before. I didn't. I got it back again, but it wasn't a fun 15 minutes. I love that feature, and that was when I got really excited about the game, and I was like, "Oh no, I haven't played the gameplay. If the gameplay is like Yu-Gi-Oh or something I don't like, then it doesn't matter how good this feature is, I won't be able to stay excited." I love the gameplay. I printed out the print decks in December. It's very good back and forth. The way you can play cards that feel very powerful, and yet the way you can only get at most one advancement per turn makes the game still feel lengthy and strategic. Very excited. So I've been studying the game since December, back to Kickstarter, been playing my locals, and then eventually I was at this tournament.
Nice. Yeah, I think you're the first person in the interviews I have done thus far as like the Angers folks, um, that have mentioned like the convenience factor with like the QR codes too, and like being able to replace your cards. And then on top of that, I think you're the earliest person I've heard like saying like December. So, because I had never heard of this article that you're talking about either, so it's interesting that you mentioned that. You were way ahead of the curve compared to a lot of people, it sounds like. So, interesting. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously, the event in Arizona just recently happened. It's been promoted to be the first major event for Altered in North America, with even representatives from the developer coming all the way out to the event and running different side events. For those who couldn't attend, what was the experience like just being there compared to other events like you mentioned you played Magic, and whatnot, you might have attended, or obviously this isn't your first major.
Yeah, it was definitely like a little more casual than a lot of other events I had traveled that distance to. The stakes weren't like as high, and like everyone knew it's like a new game. Everyone is learning. I think I performed really well, but compared to other games that I had been playing longer because I've been out longer, I felt like there was more mistakes than usual. So like kind of the balance between competitiveness and also just feeling like it's a new experience. You shouldn't beat yourself up for a mistake, that kind of thing. Gave it a really different feel than other events. I think an event can be tense and still be fun. But this was definitely a lot of fun. And there was also this feeling of that by playing this tournament, all of us together, that we're like, you know, collectively saying that this game is really good. It's like worth caring about. That we're showing each other our decks that we built and worked hard on and have cool choices for because there's so much to do in this game. So it had that kind of celebratory feel to it because the game is new.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things that I've dealt with thus far, like even in the Discord and even like talking to different people, even from a competitive environment, is that they really enjoy the community that's been involved with the game. There's not a lot of like people saying like there's a lot of toxic people being difficult just to be difficult at an event type of thing. Even with the Andres tournament with over 1,000 players, some of the players were saying yeah, everyone was just nice, even if they couldn't speak the same language as the other person, type of thing. So it's cool to see that go over to North America, especially since we're a little bit more of a smaller community compared to the Europeans and everything. But it's cool to hear that at least for this first event that's how it is. And I know you mentioned you've done a lot of locals as well, and I have to imagine it's pretty similar at those locals for you too.
Yeah, yeah. Locals are very friendly. Um,
Yeah.
sometimes some people have trouble like figuring out like their first strategies they want to do. I do hear that from some like very fresh beginners.
Mhm.
Because there's like a lot of occasionally, especially at the very beginning level, there's a lot of directionlessness in Altered. Like, do I play the left lane or the right lane? They're the same, and I'm confused. Um, but everyone is so nice. Like, even if you were like a little harsh about that, it could be pretty discouraging. But everyone's like really nice about the game and like learning new things and teaching each other things. So it leads to a lot of exciting moments as people learn more and more.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just, especially with the game being new, is keeping that up and being able to build community as a whole across like North America in general. I know even Canada got their stuff a little bit late, so making sure that everyone's involved to some capacity, I think, is a good idea, and hopefully we see that more at future like large events past just the locals. But yeah, I mean, obviously with this being the first major event, we've talked about a few positive things already, but I'm sure there were a lot of positives and negatives for it. For you as like a player or competitor, is there any like specific updates or changes you would like to see for future major events in the area?
Uh, a little short on negatives for the event. Um, I do know that like an improvements to the judge program are necessary. I guess that would be maybe my biggest one that I had an experience with at the event because there was apparently a judge that miscommunicated with someone about how monolith legate worked, and later when they played into my monolith legate, it was kind of unfair that they lost their card because they didn't understand that my monolith legate could do that because it had been misexplained. So I got the correct ruling at my table. But I think that's something where there's room for improvement. I think something like a card by card FAQ document, like they use and emphasize at Magic pre-releases, would be a good thing that doesn't require a full judge program, where you just suggest that whoever is running the event, anytime someone has a question about the card, type in the name of the card, check real quick if there's like a blurb there that you didn't expect, that kind of thing. I'm not sure if Monolith Legate has something written yet, so maybe it's just a matter of telling people that the app can already do that, because I know it does that for Mighty Jin. But that would be my biggest one, I think.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I know even like with some existing games, they don't even have official judge programs yet, um, type of thing. So the quicker they get on it as developers and make sure things are settled, I think would be the ideal situation. I know they're working on getting judges for PAX Unplugged as well, and like trying to get people signed up for that. So I think that'll be a big opportunity to see how they can manage that moving forward, especially for Altered. So interesting thought. And then I mean, like, is there anything in particular as far as your favorite things about the event other than just like the community and enjoying the atmosphere?
I really enjoyed the community. really really liked the game, so the game I was competing at was one I really liked. Um, I know that this event ran with like these really generous time constraints, and it is nice to not draw. If events get too large, more and more we're not going to just have that luxury because you like have to finish the rounds. Although this event wasn't a 2-day event yet, but that was like really nice. No one likes straws. That was a good thing. Uh, yeah, I think. Oh, so if anyone doesn't know, I mean, I kind of in my head assume everyone knows. A great thing about this event is that anyone who is in between rounds could play against the Equinox staff and play 2v2s at like this kind of mini game area. And you got like really small prizes, or not really small prizes, really random prizes. That's what I meant. You got really random prizes from that. Um, Keeping that up will be really good. Just keeping the side events really fun, and the idea of ones that you could do even if you're just because your round finished early, that's kind of cool. That's pretty different from other games.
For sure. I mean, honestly, I've played a few different 2v2s just in my locals kind of thing, and it's a fun format, and it'd be interesting to see like if people can optimize for that setup in general. And I know they obviously had the boss battles over there as well, so that seems like a fun thing to have, and really cool that they came out in the first place to be able to support it. I think that probably incentivized a few people to make the trip out, especially if they weren't in the area, because it's not like Arizona is like the premier spot for people to want to head out to a lot of times, right? I mean, there's the Grand Canyon, I guess, but it's not like it's always right next to everything. But yeah. But yeah, last question I have on like the general topic for that is before we dive into more to the competition itself. Um, Big thing I'm trying to accomplish with these interviews and just making altered content as a whole is to promote the game in North America, because like I mentioned, we're a little bit smaller community. Um, for you as a player within this region, is there anything that you can think of that would help promote or market the game better from that Equinox can do?
That Equinox can do. Um, I know we're probably going to get some kind of pre-release event for set 2, so that's like an already planned thing. That's pretty good. I think Equinox might need to do. It's kind of an open question, but Equinox might need to find out whether the local level event should be draft or league constructed or loose constructed, because a lot of people, a lot of events locally have been trying draft in our area, and I've heard of other events doing draft, and then sometimes in other TCG communities, I've heard that focusing on draft and like making draft the thing to do has like blocked constructed players out of playing. So maybe some putting more thought into that. And also like whether there's a way to make the draft as cheap as possible. There's like I think the answers to those questions might require market research. And they did market research at this event, which is a good thing. They passed around surveys to everyone. They like had a QR code and had people answer on there. So I think figuring out what a strong local looks like is like really important. I'm not sure what people want, but it may be a little more focused than the current thing, which is like let each local store do whatever they feel is right. Because I'm seeing a lot of local stores that are like indifferent to altered, but still have like people in the community that are passionate about altered. So you can't necessarily rely on those people to figure out what is best for their community and and pick the right event types.
For sure, and I think I can attest to that too at our locals. It pretty much just turns into the owner or the store owner is just like, what do you guys want to do half the time, right? Or we're going to do this, and then we have to convince them, like, hey, that's probably not the best idea. Like, if you want people to continue to play here, you should probably give them some incentive to stick around, kind of thing, instead of like they have promo packs, but they only want to give promo packs to players that place the top 3 or something like that, right? opposed to just
Mm-hmm.
people that are involved with the tournament. You want them to keep on coming back, especially if they're coming from other games and they're looking to play a game. Like they obviously enjoy it enough to be here, but they're not going to enjoy it if they feel like they're just wasting their time overall. So I think having something more structured that makes sense from market research, like you mentioned, might be the best thing overall. And that kind of gets into the next thing I was going to mention as far as not having to be like an ambassador or anything like that, but what do you think that other players can do to support or promote the community, even from like a local level?
I think something that's like really, really important is to just play. Um, I know that sounds like a given, but a lot of times you can like go to locals and like only bring your competitive deck that you're like excited about, and then like play 2 matches and then figure out you made a wrong build decision with it, and then take a break. Maybe be sure to like bring an extra fun deck with you, so that you can play more games. Like when people have to sit out, or any game where we have low numbers, like we're starting out here, we don't have 25 player locals in most areas. It's really important that everyone can play a lot, because they get more of a sense of the game. I had a local player mention that, like, she made a funny decision in the game, and she didn't like how it panned out, but she felt like she wasn't playing enough matches per week where she was building and understanding the game, and more reliably getting to see herself build boards that were working out for her. So like playing is really important, and like you're probably 9 out of the 10 games that you would have played anyway, even if you weren't thinking of that as an ambassador factor. But that 10th game is important, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The main thing is just getting out there and trying it. And I'm a big fan of having that extra deck that's a little bit more fun and you don't have to get serious with, right? Like it's the whole point of why I
Mm-hmm.
have like the Venka deck that I just roll all the time with, and I'm always gonna roll no matter what, even if it's not ideal. But anyway, um, but yeah, anyway, always try for the anchor, even if you don't need it. But past that, getting more into the actual competition, if you can, just like, what was the experience like making it through the Swiss rounds into the top eight, like the top cut, and I mean, obviously, eventually the finals. Were you expecting it?
I was expecting to make cut, because I practiced a whole lot for the event, and I was pretty confident, and I've made similar results in other games. And I felt like I'd prepared more for this game than even those other games, because I'm really excited about Altered. So I wasn't really surprised to make the cut, and I kind of that my over under was to more make the cut than not. After you get into the cut, anything can happen inside the cut, because you don't have one loss of like hit points. If you lose one time, you're out. Uh, I didn't use that in the Swiss this time, but I could have needed it. Uh, so I didn't necessarily expect to make finals, but I was hoping for a good placement within the cut, and I did win my first 2 matches. So
Yep.
I was pretty happy. I was pretty unsurprised to go from top 4 to finals, because I had defeated the my top 4 opponent in the Swiss, and I had kind of liked how that went. But I was pretty surprised about winning my top 8 match. So
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I understand you did go undefeated through Swiss, correct?
yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because I remember people mentioning that you actually end up playing your finals matchup in the last round of Swiss because you were both undefeated at that point, right? Yeah. I mean, past that, I know you mentioned that you did a lot of preparation for this event and you're really excited for Altered. Did you have other decks that you're considering playing for the event, other than the hero that everyone talks about all the time in the Discord, or what made you decide on the final deck that you chose?
I spent most of my like time budget for the event, working on Ren and Orchid decks, and trying to test it against friends and test it against myself to see if it could beat Waru. I already knew it was beating other decks okay, just like at locals, and even assuming my opponents had played slightly different configurations at locals, that part seemed fine. But ultimately, I decided that it was not a good call into Waru, I don't think, because you're really hoping for your opponent not to have a lot of removal spells, and Robin Hood kind of counts as a removal spell if you're trying to play 3 characters in one turn. So I put that down and picked up Waru because it was like maybe my second or third favorite deck in the meta and really well positioned. Um, I think he just has the best matchup spread of any hero right now unless and until people stop playing a lot of his really good matchups. His matchup spread is really, really, really good. Um, Fen might do really well against him, but like when the Fen player plays against the Trace and the Waru player plays against the Trace, you would like to get to be the Waru player, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the worst matchups that everyone always mentions, right? Um, I mean, and even looking at your deck list, I know looking through some of the stuff in like the huge event in France that there was some pretty nutty Waru based uniques. It doesn't look like you even went with like a crazy additional tax unique in your deck list and just did more stuff to facilitate your deck as a whole. Was there like a general plan behind that, other than what you mentioned as far as having the best overall setup between other decks?
Uh, the uniques in my deck mostly allow me to play more rares and mostly let me play uniques that are not worse than the commons. I didn't feel like my uniques were exceptional except for the Sandman. I think the Sandman is pretty powerful because you get to Sandman twice, so it's kind of like you replace one of your rares and then you get an additional rare. Pretty much every game where you Sandman the first time, the game is going to proceed in such a way that you can Sandman again. Because like you had to be comfortable enough to take a turn where you Sandman yourself. So that means you should be doing well enough that you can do the thing where you Sandman your opponent on the last turn of the game and then win. So that unique is pretty strong, but the other ones are kind of treading water. Um, Baba Yaga was a response to Fen being really strong. He helps you redraw a card if you have been getting acapella a lot.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting people's different perspective on that. I've even seen some people go with less uniques just for the purpose of having an additional common card that they might want to throw in their deck, kind of thing, and still not do horrible, kind of, or just even do well or past that. So it's
Mm.
always interesting to hear like the different perspectives on that. And this a random additional question for you: was there anything in particular as far as like the recent events in France or like the online tournaments that influenced your decision, other than like potential local play?
Started playing. I dropped. I put down Rin and picked up Waru like a week before France. Because if I had waited until the Angers tournament to make my deck choice based on it, it would have been like not enough practice time. You need to practice the deck you're going to bring to the tournament. Even if it's a really strong deck like Waru, you don't need to paint a mythology and think that you just like play your cards and they win for you. You have to learn. I had to pick a deck in advance of that. So I was already on Waru when Ongers happened, but I was on the Meadow plan
Mm,
before Ongers happened, and then I saw the Ongers list, and it immediately made sense to me because the great thing about the difference in the list is that Frog Prince. The reason you can't run Frog Prince is because Meadow is like an empty air card and Frog Prince is kind of an empty air card. And so I just never considered if you cut the Meadow, then you can run the Frog Prince, and the Frog Prince is so good. So that I made a huge change in how I was playing for the week right before the tournament due to seeing that aggressive switch.
yeah, I think a lot of people are noticing the idea of having that rare frog prince involved in your deck, especially from a Waru perspective, is just better than the Meadow at this point. I know all, pretty much everyone had Meadow initially, right, when things are going around, and maybe there's still some debate out there from others, but I think it's kind of hard to argue with results. as far as the people that are using it and the people that aren't overall. So yeah, I mean, with that, there's obviously been some preliminary info released on the Discord and just in random spots as far as like the hero makeup. I know Justin had posted something on the Discord about it, and even maybe on Twitter as well. Um, and even a few deck lists have been released. Shout out to Robbie, the Finn player. If you ever want to talk, let me know. But based on your experience and like looking back at your matches, do you think there's anything that you change, anything that surprised you, and what was your most difficult match of the event, other than maybe the finals?
My most difficult match of the event was definitely the Tasia I played against. The Tasia hit a lot of resupplies into immediately re-anchoring a 3/5/5 aloe vera. That's really strong. Taja's generally very strong into Waru. She's one of my favorite. She's one of my favorite concepts of a counter deck that can really counter Waru. Um, so I was not surprised to be having trouble with the matchup. And the match went like Waru loss. Waru goes into tiebreakers and somehow wins. And I only won the tiebreakers with like I had to play a line where there was like 12 of the cards in their deck would have been an out to my line, but they just didn't have any of the 12. And then game 3 I did like do the Robin Hood snowball all the way out in the all the way at the finish line halfway before it started, that kind of thing. That the good hands that game, but Tasia was definitely the hardest of the event for me, and I would run one more recruit and one fewer Thoth if I did the tournament again. That was the first thing I wanted to change immediately after the event. That's in the rare slot.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Tasia. I hadn't heard that yet from previous like Waru players as a whole, especially since like it feels like there has been a lot of Tasia participation. At least I know there was in Angers. I don't remember offhand if that was the same for Arizona or not. But I know there was the one Argent. But past that, do you think there's a particular reason why we haven't seen a Tasia in the top cut?
Uh, it's a good question. I think Tasia she she's got the weird thing going on with the Hydrocana, right? It's unclear whether or not you should play a heavy count or play like just one Hydrocana to keep them honest, or don't play any. And then that has a weird mini game with Sticky Steel Scrolls, which is usually in the Ordis decks. Perhaps Taja is just like losing that mini game a lot right now, and maybe there's a lot of improvements she can make um, by doing whatever it is that the isolated events on BGA that are making some Warriors say Tasia is really good say that. um, that could be one aspect. She could have some bad matchups that are just outside of those two decks. I know removal hits really hard against her, and Waru does have 3 teamwork training per deck, but for instance, Traced has like way better access to however many Keylon bursts he
Yeah.
chooses to run because he's drawing extra cards. So that's an example of a deck where you would rather be playing Waru. Purple in general, I think you have the gates on top of the off you goes, and also you're like bouncing the off you goes, so that's more total removal than the teamwork training.
Yeah.
So I guess either the removal or the evaluation of Hydrocana that is developing would be my two answers.
Yeah, it's an interesting like dichotomy there as far as like trying to balance wanting to beat the deck for the tournaments, right? But then also understanding you may not even run into it the entire time,
Mhm.
and that means you may not make it through Swiss to even get to the top cut. So um,
Mhm.
still interesting on that line, and it's cool to hear other people's perspective on it. Final questions for you. Do you have any advice for players like looking to play competitively and replicate your success at future events?
It's good to really practice. it's good to think about how you practice. Not all time spent is created equal. There's there's things besides just playing games that you might want to do to improve your play. Like you might want to play a certain stacked hand that's like important to analyze against yourself. You might want to ask a friend to play a very specific deck, or even like very specific cards that you're likely to see because you're not seeing them at your locals and you need it to practice against them at least one time. That kind of thing. Um, so definitely do that. Try to try to pick a hero that's a balance of something that you're excited about, but something that has good advantages, a good reason you should be playing them. Um, you know, think about what some of the best decks are. Like, think about, you want to have a plan for like what decks you want to play against that would be a reward for playing your deck, and be sure the consequences aren't too bad. The consequences can be a little bad, but so those are my a couple of my thoughts. But definitely just have fun and play as much as you can. As long as you stay excited and have fun, you're going to get the hours in and the reps in, and that's going to make it easier to make the right decisions because you've seen them over and over again.
For sure. And I think like one of the big things that you mentioned as far as like, especially at your locals, try to get practice with those other decks you expect to see, kind of thing, right? Um, I'll I gave some I gave him some shit about it afterwards, but I played Robbie the Finn, all of the marbles.
Mhm.
The week before the event at our local, I was playing Waru, and I say
Mhm.
like, the reason you made it that far is obviously because I played Waru against you. You're welcome, kind of thing. But
Uh-huh.
uh,
Well,
probably not.
I
But
asked one of my locals to play Fen for me a week before it, and then I had my top eight match was Fen, so
worked out right.
yeah, so
But yeah,
he gets to play that thing too if he wants to.
exactly. So it always helps. I did beat him, by the way, so take that, Robbie. Anyway, last thing for you. Do you have any plans for your future as far as like Altered, any future events, any other things you have planned?
We don't know when the next event is going to be in North America, really. So I'm just going to try to practice a lot of different decks because we don't really know what set two is going to do. So it's good to just like generally be good at the game. Even playing the deck that's not the deck you're eventually playing can make you stronger at the game, and probably more importantly, will be fun because Altered's a really fun game. So I'm gonna keep attending my locals a whole lot. Um, Keep trying to collect lots of different cards that might be usable in different decks that appeal to me. And once we know what some of the larger events in Altered look like, that are more accessible to me than the Europe ones, I will definitely be signing up for them. I don't play the BGA events a lot. Um, I think I recommend them though. Me personally, I enjoy playing analog, and I'm more willing to do some other ways of practicing that I mentioned, like playing against myself even, instead of doing an online event, just because that's what the kind of thing I enjoy. So
For
uh,
sure.
I I'll get to do my next major when we have major analog events in 2025.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to beat the meeting people in person and playing them kind of thing. The
Hmm.
online aspect is nice. Like, don't get me wrong, it helps a lot of people that are in like remote areas and they can't attend things for a good amount, or they have to drive hours even for locals. But I don't think anything really beats those major events. And I think like the only one that I have heard of in the states at this point was the one that at PAX Unplugged in Pennsylvania in December. But past that, I'll be excited to see what the developers come up with as far as like official events in the future in general. But yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, past that, shout out to Gamers Guild for running this event in the first place. I know it got hyped up a little bit in North America, so glad you did. Did you have any shout outs or any things you wanted to plug?
I have a YouTube channel. I think it's called just my name with some numbers at it, May Hayden. Maybe if you search May Hayden Altered, it probably comes up. I posted a recap for the event out there if anyone wanted to watch it. if they wanted more, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
I'll grab that from you and I'll link that in my video so that way they can go check it out. But yeah, if there's nothing else, just wanted to say thanks for joining, and excited to see what you can do in the future. Hopefully, you can get that win and for the next big event, right? So,
yeah.
uh, past that, talk to you later, and have a good rest of your night.